today? Woo.
Doing well.
Whoop. Come on, how are we today? Woo. There we go. Okay, perfect. Hello. Thank you all so much for coming down today. My name is Sarah Colley. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Great Falls Public Library. And we are here to do a monthly program, Stories from the River. This is a collaboration program that we have with the Sun River Watershed Group, and we are so excited to be able to collaborate with local partners in order to make speaking engagements fun, exciting, educational, and beautiful, right? So the Great Falls Public Library is here to connect people and knowledge, and that is in a variety of different ways, from author talks to photo talks to documentaries to, the books that we have upstairs. We love being able to be a great resource for the community. But part of this program was because the Sun River Watershed Group and I'm one of their volunteers, and I do a lot with them because it's fun. Wink, wink. You should do it too. But we wanted to find a different way to connect people to the environment throughout the winter time. And bringing y'all here to the library just made sense, right? I mean, it's April, but we're still wearing winter jackets. It's a weird day. So that's kind of how all of this came about. But I have Madison here, and she's gonna share a little bit about the Sun River Watershed Group itself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Madison Collier. I'm the program coordinator for the Sun River Watershed Group. We are a local nonprofit, conservation nonprofit. I've recognized some of you from some of our events, but we kind of focus from all the way out Gibson Dam, all the way through following the Sun River into Great Falls. So we do all sorts of things like this, partnering with the library, doing these speaker events. We do water quality monitoring, we do water management. So we do a host of different things, but we love working with Sarah because she is one of our best volunteers. But we also think it's so important, putting educational stuff on like this and connecting with all of you and just being a presence in the community in general. So that's kind of us and what we do. We have a lot of events coming up, a lot of opportunities to volunteer if you would like. We have a list in the back if you want to come visit us, or you can find us on Facebook. And we do have a website. So.
Yeah. The Rain Barrel Workshop is coming up soon, and my gutters just broke, so I'm thinking I'm gonna come to it.
yeah, it'll be here in Great Falls this year, so come visit us and we can chat about it if you're interested.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so tonight, as we've gone through the program thus far for the Stories from the River, we've heard from a whole host of different folks, right? Hal is sitting in the back, and he was our first presenter for this program, and we are excited to bring Tony Bynum out as well. So Tony is a Montana-based photographer, media professional, scientist, and conservationist. Current projects include a long-term photography project in central Montana focusing on Square Butte and its changing land use, which will be the focus of tonight's presentation. In October of last year, he completed conservation photography project Grasslands of Montana for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. In September of 2025, Tony completed a 2-week assignment about Native Americans and buffalo restoration for Terre Sauvage.
Yeah, so it's the French National Geographic.
It's the French National Geographic. I don't speak French. A prominent French nature and travel magazine that focuses on the planet's wild and authentic nature, featuring in-depth articles, stunning photography, and stories on environmental protection and adventure. The name translates to Wild Earth or Savage Land. So with that, we have tonight's presentation about the Square Butte project, and I'm excited. So please join me in welcoming Tony.
I'm trying to turn this thing on. I don't know if I need it, but it's on. Okay, thank you. And thank you for putting this together, and thank you for coming out. It's a pleasure to speak with you tonight. first things, I guess, I'm pretty lackadaisical about this stuff, so if you have questions, you can ask them. Particularly as I go through, if you have any, but I'm planning to make some time at the end for questions. How many people are from, like, living in Great Falls? Anybody come from anywhere else out of town by Square Butte? Am I gonna talk to somebody who lives there? Everyone's Great Falls, great. So generally speaking, I need to talk a little bit about myself and what my background and history is a little bit in order to put some context into this. I do have a series of images to show you, which I think you'll enjoy, but before I do that, I just want to say that the context in which I'm presenting this really has a lot to do with who I am and what I've done and what I believe and how I think about the world. My mother, on my mother's side of the family, my grandmother came from and lived during the termination era. She came from a reservation in Oregon. She also went to boarding school in Oregon, and that part of the history is important to me because it influenced much of the rest of my life when it comes to restoration. Part of the reservation was returned in 1980. At the time, I was 10, I guess. And so just that history alone helps sort of put some kind of boundary or expose some thoughts that I have about restoration generally and about conservation photography and landscapes. I wasn't particularly a great student in high school. I did graduate. I finished. I was not expected to go to college. No one in my family had gone to college. There wasn't money to go to college, so I, luckily enough, ended up going to college. Most of the men, in fact, all the men in my family went into the service. So I was kind of the first one to buck that trend, and I give the credit to that probably to my mother, who set me up, I think, to be a bad soldier. If I was going to go in the service, I probably wasn't going to take orders very well. So it worked out, but I went to college. My college was paid for through hard work, farming, cowboying, ranching, selling anything I could, making food, working on whatever I could do to make money, and I put myself through college, and later I went to graduate school, and that was paid for through a very generous fellowship through the Bureau of Reclamation. United States government, it was a grant at a university that I went to, and I was invited to be the first student in a graduate program in resource management, and the goal of that program was to specifically bring Native people into this program so that when they're done with a master's in resource management, they would return to the reservation or Indian country and help develop programs to manage natural resources, or at least be part of the discussion in ways that for a long time people never were. And so I was successful in that, and I learned later on the reason. I mean, it seems bizarre, but I wondered, like, why me? Because I had gone to college, and I wasn't a great college student. I finished in geography. I got a degree in geography and a degree in environmental studies. And later on, the dean of the program told me, this was much later on, I finally asked him, I had the courage to say, like, why did you do that? And he said, well, because I knew you would show up and do the work. And so that's important. Not the best student, but I would do the work. So after that work, I spent the next 15 or 18, a whole career actually, as a scientist, working largely in the Columbia River Basin for the Yakima Nation, and then spent a couple of years in Washington, D.C., working under Bill Clinton and under George W. Bush at the Environmental Protection Agency. I left the Environmental Protection Agency just really maybe a couple weeks before 9/11, and which was a blessing, I think, in some ways. But anyway, I ended up back in Montana shortly after that. where I was working as a consultant for a number of years, and that's also when I got serious about photography. I think mainly I got serious about photography because it was what I felt was a way to put all these skills together that I had and tell different stories and hopefully affect people and their thinking. Let's move on to I think we can move on. So let's move on, and I'm going to talk a little bit. This is a video I'm going to show you quickly. It's playing at the New History Museum in Helena, and this was a project that was, let's see, I'm not looking at how to make it go, I'm reading myself. The edit on this video was put together by a firm or a contractor, a producer named Erin Finnegan. I think she did a pretty good job at this. She had done, I think they contracted with her to do a bunch of these videos. Which, has anybody been to the new museum? So this is one of, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 videos there. And I'm sorry?
They're all good.
Oh, they're all good. I'm supposed to do this maybe over here. Oh, and the volume. People, look at that. Now, you can't not look at it. You can't not explore it. You can't not imagine a landscape there. I like to focus on as a photographer is looking at landscapes and recording their current status. The landscape around Fort Mountain is rapidly changing. This is large-scale agriculture and massive development. And it is reducing the complexity of the environment. And it's happening now in Montana, in the most beautiful prairie landscape left. My hope is that by capturing some of these images, that when it becomes necessary to restore this landscape, there's actually a record that people can look to. You can see that dark line on the bottom of Square View, or Fort Mountain as some people call it. That's the crop, a new crop being planted. And I'm certain that that's sort of the future for much of this landscape. I grew up farming. There's a future for agriculture here. I think that we can build a system here that can improve what's here without losing the ability for people to survive and make a living at farming. What do people want in Montana? You have to ask them, but you come to see pronghorn, and you steer and elk and grizzly bears. I love the idea of imagining this massive prairie, this big butte surrounded by what to me looks like a savanna, sort of this mecca of wildlife in space. Combining the photography with conservation and science with a purpose, that is important. The photography has a purpose. So, that worked. I'm still showing this. Okay, I thought it was going to do something else and it didn't. So, okay. So, quick comment about that. Now, I just want to say I'm not naive. I mean, I'm not, and I'm also not suggesting that we return to the Stone Ages or that somehow agriculture is bad or that all of the things that we're doing right now are bad. But what I am doing is trying to be better informed and help to inform and look at the environment and look at places in a way that helps us make better decisions or keep options open for the future. The example here is, obviously animals, there were more deer, there were more elk, there were more wildlife, and I think that's what really drove me initially with this project, was spending a number of years just looking at Square Butte and driving around it and trying to understand what was happening there. And I started out thinking, well, I want to have a whole series of beautiful images like these paintings I've seen before of Square Butte and wildlife. I want to see deer and elk and all these different things. That never materialized. Like, I was really surprised. I found more deer in Great Falls in my yard when I was living in town than I did in this area between here and Cascade. Aside from being on the river, there just are very few animals. And now that we live out past a home where we see the butte every day, I mean, I'm still surprised. I don't think I've seen 3 whitetail in a year. I've seen a few pronghorn, and they come through and we see them, but so that was a good thing in a way for me, from the standpoint of like looking at this. It made me think about, well, what's happening here and what's happening. So while I'm not really dwelling on the past, I'm trying to use the past to sort of inform and develop my thinking into what's possible. And what options have we lost because of what we've done or what we're doing now? Doesn't mean we don't continue to do things, it just means we need to, I think clearly about this and how do we live and how do we survive. I remember being, 15 years old and the dryland wheat farm I worked on at the time, the people that ran that farm just kept places to hunt deer, and they kept places to hunt pheasant, and they kept places to fish, but they still grew grain. And now I think we've sort of gone farther than what I thought I would ever see in my life too, which is maximize yield in agriculture and build at whatever expense we can afford at the time without thinking much about the future. So yeah, I'm not saying we should go back to stone tools, but let's move to the next slide, which I knew there was going to be something wrong with this thing. All right. Does anybody know why I can't go to the next slide?
Click it again.
Okay, let me try this. Okay, well, I'm going to the next slide. So this is kind of a representation of what I spent a long time, looking around at, and this is kind of what I saw. And when I saw a deer, it was, like, there's one and it's running away. And so again, I was just surprised at that, which made me interested in asking more questions and digging a little deeper to find out what's happening here. And I sort of looked at it, and I went to the archives. I started looking around in the museum here in Cascade County and digging and trying to find information about this place. And what I found out was that Square Butte, while it's been mentioned a lot, and while it ends up in a photo in the background of somebody's home or a ranch or like kids playing back in 1950, someone snapped a photo, there's never really been anything put together in any real cohesive manner that looks at the culture, the people, and the landscape, and really focuses more on Square Butte itself. And I was looking at that because I thought it was going to help me inform me, and I was going to use it as an introduction to this project I wanted to build. Well, it turns out it doesn't really exist in book form. And so, there's some geology on it, there's some certain newspaper articles. Eric Heidel did a really neat article on it for Montana Outdoors a number of years ago. But there was never anything I came across that I really went, okay, somebody actually focused on a landform and what was happening around it. What I found, and what I continue to find, is it's ag land. It's just farms. And I don't see it that way. I know it is farms and it is ag land and it's all kinds of other things, but I see it as a much richer place with a lot more happening than cows and grazing and some hunting on the side. And so again, this piqued my interest a little bit more, and I wanted to put something together. And so I was a little bit surprised when you look on social media, and I read articles and reports, things about the Butte and about local news and such, and people have opinions about Square Butte. They care about it, they say things about it, they say different things. Some people don't know what to call it, other people confuse it with other places and vice versa. And it's Fort Mountain, it's Square Butte, it's Rattlesnake, it's all these things. And what I can tell you about that and what I know for sure is that people will defend their position about the place, and they also care about it. And I found this interesting. This was on Facebook. And so here's, somebody posted a picture of Square Butte and it says, "I like Square Buttes and I cannot lie." And then someone says, "About 20 miles west of Great Falls, I took an audition out there, or out here, coming from New York. The butte shown is about 2 miles from where I took the picture. Made my way out to Interstate 15, was slack-jawed by the scenery." This was May of 2016, and I made a trip back in 17. Another person said, "This is what I imagine when I daydream of running away." Another person said, "I would have ran, but something about the fence and where I was made me think twice, possibly getting shot for trespassing." One man's misery is another man's mystery. My grandparents ranched there. It's a great view, lots of memories. And then finally, the funny thing is that this butte doesn't receive much recognition. It doesn't even have its own name. Square Butte refers to several buttes in Montana. When I came back in 17, I drove my wife out here to see it. Then we went to the Buffalo Jump and got startled by a rattlesnake. It's prime country out there. So, I mean, people care about this place, and yet it's just farmland, it's just ranch land. Nothing, I could find very little information about, do you care about the place? How important is it? What does it mean to you? And this continued, and still today, to pique my interest, and this moves me into a little bit of how do we know about Square Butte, and it's through art. Everybody's familiar with Charlie Russell. This happens to be one of our children. I took this photograph. This was one of her senior pictures. She's played violin quite well, and she is actually getting her PhD in climate science now at the University of Washington. So it's art. It's meaningful to people in many different ways. I'm going to show you this because I'm sure everybody has probably seen this painting in one form or another, whether it's been the print, in a book, people use it all the time. And the quote here, I mean, if you think about this quote today, this guy would not be alive. Like, everybody loves him. Every rancher wants a picture of his, everybody loves him to death, everybody reveres him. But here's his quote from 1919. Here out of Great Falls, he was speaking to a group of settlers. "In my book, a pioneer is a man who turned all the grass upside down, strung barbed wire over the dust that was left, poisoned the water, cut down the trees, killed the Indian who owned the land, and called it progress. If I had my way, the land here would be like God made it, and none of you sons of bitches would be here at all." Contrast that or compare that to today if you're a cowboy or a farmer and you're like, "Oh yeah, look at my Charlie Russell, you know. This is the guy," right? So things have changed, let's put it that way. I love his artwork, I love his attitude. So I'm going to move now from sort of this background history, all this stuff, and move into the project itself. Exactly what is it? What am I doing? So this project consists of 3 major visual components. First are photographs, and those photographs consist of primarily sort of documentary images and also artful images. I've done a number of these similar projects like this. They've gotten worldwide attention. The New York Times, Der Spiegel, I had both come to interview me and spend time doing films and discussing with me these projects because the connection between people and land and place and the potential future of continued development is important around the world. I have traveled and looked at these things on every continent but the cold one in the south, and it's a theme around the world. These are important matters, and so the mapping part, so there's photos, there's a little bit of journalism, but there's photography, that's art. And I think the art is meant to, people would comment on the one I did up in Browning, or Blacksea. The question was, why do these photographs look so beautiful? Because they're environmental damage, but they're beautiful. And there was a purpose for that, and the purpose is to get people interested in looking at them. Because if it's just a photo, or if it doesn't make you have a feeling, or if it doesn't make you think or move you in some way, it's not doing the job that I would expect it or want it to do for the purpose here. So there's two folds. There's artful images, and then there's sort of more documentary. There's also a map, and it's on my website. It's an interactive map, shows these locations. The technology is using GPS, global positioning, so that in the future people can use the map. They can tell where these images were taken, exactly where they were taken, when they were taken, and they can actually go back and reproduce an image. How many times have we seen these historical, photo projects where people spend a lot of time, hours, days, years, trying to find images and then go back to kind of reshoot that image, but there's no data, there's no information. They just try to find people who know these areas and say, where do you think this photo was taken from? And then they take you there, and you might get it right, you might not. So this helps solve some of that. So then there's a third part, and that's a book. I didn't think that was an important part of this in the beginning. I thought, I'm just gonna do the digital, do the photos, do the science part of this, put all this stuff together. But then I started thinking, when I was living in Washington, D.C., I'd go to the Library of Congress often, and I remember having a discussion with a woman there in the Library of Congress, and her job was to research and come up with a solution to archiving books. That was her sole position there. And you're in these stacks of books in the basement that you can go in there and get books that are 200 or 300 years old, and you just pick them up. It used to be this way. You could just pick them up and read them and look at them. And she's in there working away, trying to figure all this out. And she said, I asked her, how are you gonna do this? And she said, well, we are digitizing everything, but then we have to keep every single digital technology that we use, because we're not gonna be able to run the picture or the technology without that machine. So in 50 years, we have to have the machine that we use today to look at it. And she said, so the best thing is to print it, because these books are hundreds of years old, and it's in print, and if you make enough copies, there's always a copy, and it's going to tell the story. And so the book, that I decided maybe I need to print some of this at some point. The second phase of this project is going to be the people. Right now I'm I think I've pretty much got the foundation for the first part. The second part is the people. I've never done the people part. I have photographed hundreds of people, portraits, stories for newspapers and magazines, but I never sat down and did the photos of the people. I think that's an important part of this, and I'm challenged by this, and I'm going to do that part. So let's go and look at this map, I guess, real quick. And this is available online. If you Google my name and Fort Mountain or Square Butte, this is mostly a title for Google, because I want people to find it if they are looking for this, which you can watch the video again, or that's there. This is the map, and I'm going to enlarge this map, and it gives you, whoops, why didn't it make it bigger? That's supposed to make it full size. Oh, here it is, up here, I'm sorry. Okay, so this, you can see Square Butte right here in the middle. I think there's a pointer on here. Right here. On this map, you can see that I put the roads on there. These roads have descriptions, how to get there, where to go. I'm going to close this for now. And each one of these is a photograph. And in each photograph, there's a description of what it is. This is basically the north end of the butte, and just a little scene photo. All of these are sort of strategic in that they're in locations where I believe, I'm just guessing, but based on the roads, they're gonna be permanent. Anybody can go there 100 years from now, if there's a road there, it's probably gonna be public, I'm hoping, because they're anchored into these positions. Now, maybe it becomes private, they shut the road down, I don't know, but I'm doing my best guess. So each one of these has a photo. The red ones are more artistic style images. And I put those in there because I was interested in that from the very beginning. That's what I was doing to try to energize myself into finding out more about this, is I wanted to shoot really interesting photos of the place and just really focus on Square View. And so that's what I did. And so there's even, I think, so you remember that painting, Charlie Russell's painting? So I found where I think it was taken near here. It was probably just down this bench a little bit, probably more to the east. But basically this is a view, and this is coming from, this would be Shaw, Fort Shaw down here, and then so it would be much further north on the north side of the view. This is looking towards Cascade and south. But it's a real place. Like if you look at those paintings, his paintings, you're like, wow, I see the bends, I see everything is there. So I thought that was kind of interesting in doing this exploration. Let's shut that down. I need to go back to this map. And so this map is available. All these locations are in here. There's directions on how to get there, and so on. Now this is going to be the tricky part. I want to go back here, and I want to go here, and I want to go. Is that right? Awesome. I want to go to the next one. Oh, let's see. So I got all that. Yeah, good. The next one is this. I put this in here in case the technology didn't work. I was going to have to explain that. So this map, though, I put this on here. It's interesting. This is Google Earth, and this is my interface at home on my computer. And so every time I take a photograph, I have a little GPS unit on it, and each of these. It went to the next one. Each of those, I don't know how to get back. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Each of the points on here is actually where there's photographs, and the number tells you how many there are. And so this is how I do this at home. But if you look at the map, you'll see Square View is right here. And when I'm at home, I can see that I have 7 photographs from there, 3 from there, 14 from there, and 15, and so on. And this is around the world. This is Google Maps. It hooks into my program at home. And every time I take a photograph that I actually allow it to see, it puts a point on my Google Earth map. Which I think is pretty cool. And when I export photos out of this program, I'll just tell you, I scrub that data most of the time. I mean, there's a whole issue of public-private, and what right do you have? And you're inviting people to drive on my gravel roads, and we were out the other day taking some pictures, and literally we're like 300 yards away from this house, and the guy literally comes screaming out his house at us. What are you doing? And I didn't really know what it was. I could hear him, but I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So we get in the car, and we're driving down the road, and I see him waving his arm, like, oh shit, I think he wants to talk to us. So I drove in and we talked to him, but people are very skeptical of what's happening. Pull out a camera and, people get nervous. Another tool, Onyx, is another tool that I use. And again, these are all different photo points, and they are for a different purpose, but it's just another tool for tracking what I'm doing. I'm going to move through this is the part where you can just look at pictures, because I'm kind of done with all that other stuff. So I don't, my schedule on this, I'm hoping to get, if anybody knows anybody that is in the Square Butte area, I have a list of people I want to start talking to, and I want to try and encourage them to be subjects for this project. I think it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge, but I hope people decide they wanna do this, whether they like me politically or otherwise, or whether they think farming's good or bad, but I wanna find people who believe there is a connection between them, themselves, and the butte. Not that they just happen to have an address, but like the people who really are there because of the place. And I know there are people like this, I'll find some. Yeah, these are just photos of the place, and I find them interesting, so I'm gonna show you a few. And maybe, is there a way to make it so it doesn't have the white around there? Oh, thank you. Wait. Oh, do I have to do something and F11? Huh? Just one right here. Oh, okay, thanks. Wow, all right. Oh, shit. Now this ain't working. Gee whiz. Click over here. Oh, there we go. That's working. Yeah, I think that when I started this project, it was like 2019, 2020, something like that. And I really got nervous with the amount of growth, and I'll show you some of the things. Maybe you've seen some of this, maybe you haven't, but if you haven't seen what's happening, it's, to me, well, I was really excited when I saw that property, that 5,000 acre piece for sale, and it didn't sell for a long time. It's the one right off the highway when you drive by the Cascade. If you look north to the Butte, there was 5,200 acres for sale right there. And it's all that bottom land that they can't farm because it's all alkali. And I thought, man, how come nobody's trying to pick that up for a nature conservancy or do something like just before it gets, because people that are gonna buy that place, they subdivided it. People that are gonna buy that are, I'm guessing, I'm just surmising, aren't familiar with that landscape because when it's wet, it can be a pond and a mucky like mess for months, right? And we just haven't had that wet year yet. But people are moving in there. It's subdivided, they're building houses, and so, you know, it's their choice, I guess, but I'm recording it because I want there to be a record. I want there to be a way for people to see the progress. And I was really nervous because it was quite rapid at the time. Like it was happening quicker than I thought. I would turn around like, there's a new building, and there's this. And it slowed down. I feel like it slowed down. I think people have like, the rush, this last rush is kind of over, the boom is a little bit over, and I think things are slowing down, but it will start again. And I've seen, as soon as fuel prices go down and the demand for grain goes back up, the Hooderites, and I'm not saying they're bad folks, are gonna be plowing every piece of grass that'll grow a wheat field. And I mean, that's just the way it is. And doesn't have to be that way, but that's what it's gonna be. So this is all new. This is on the northeast side of Square Butte. This, I think, and I'm only surmising, I've looked at this stuff, I've been involved a little bit in farming, I kind of know what this is, but it's, these are silos, a whole bunch of new ones. I think they must have gotten some big barley contracts because they built some new facilities, they built all this storage, they also have a seed plant here that's used to separate the barley seed so they can use the good stuff for beer and the rest for feed and whatever they do. But I saw them this winter and they were separated, they had their seed mill going out there. You know, it's not, I'm not trying to say the sky is falling or anything, but this is a beautiful home that's built. Some of you have probably seen it, maybe you haven't, but it's relatively new. This is new. Probably within a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It's just a small little piece of property. Someone may have purchased it recently. I don't know the history of that, but it makes me wonder, you know, like, we know, those of us that have been around know what that is. That is a really kind of a lake. When it's, in the spring, when we have snow, like one of these years, pretty soon, this is gonna be a lake again. And so, that's the reason it's not farmed. You can see they've tried to drain it. I mean, there's all kinds of history here, but, you know, there's, images like this. This was this winter, another home going in. And these are just parcels out there, you know, like, I don't even know what people are building. And this is a new power line. This is new boxes all along the route of this power line, all the way to the colony. This is a massive new industrial facility. I don't know what they do there. It's private. The road's got a gate on it. It says private. I'm not sure what it is, but it's, you know, it's probably 3 miles from Square Butte, out in the middle of this wheat field. I threw this picture in because, to me, when I see this, I mean, again, it's not just farmland to me. I see this and I think the left is what nature's working on, and the right is what we're working on. And they couldn't be more, for this time of year, they couldn't be more different. But most people will drive through, and we see this and we're like, all right, you know, the wheat crop's gonna be great this year, you know, and I'm guilty of that. I look at that and I'm trying to figure out what the bushels are gonna be and hoping for rain in July. Like, I get that, I'm energized by it, but this is what I'm trying to document and put down in the story, and that is what's happening with the land. And if you find out that this is in 2026, this photograph was taken in March. I mean, that's important information. 50 years ago, you wouldn't have had that photograph in March. Guaranteed. It'd have been snowy and definitely not a grain field. So, you know, this is, I thought was super cool, but what is it, right? It's a weed. It's a noxious weed. It's, you know, hanging on this thing. It looks like a little glowing out there with the backlight. It's really cool, but the invasive species are another horrible problem. And people do a pretty good job managing weeds, but we're using all kinds of chemicals, and that's probably not sustainable either. Another beautiful home built out in a wheat field. This is part of that subdivision I was just referring to or talking about earlier. This was one of the 40s, I think, that was busted out 2 years ago, and somebody's put a little house on it. This, you can see there, that's, and I got a different angle of this. This is existing, this was existing, but this is the tracks that are all subdivided out through here. Whoop, I went the wrong way. New, and there's a new, and there's 2 or 3 more down here. Again, you know, there's a little farming here. Most of that country that they're in, though, is gonna be a gumbo mess if it ever gets wet again. That was a picture of that backlit. You can now see what that is. Earlier on, it was a backlit photo, and these are the new grain elevator, or the new granaries that they put in. And then I think just some kind of artful images that I enjoy. This photograph was taken from, what's the pass? There's a road what's the road that goes over into south, that goes over into the Smith River country, out of Cascade. If you go out of Cascade, you keep going south, and eventually you go up over that steep road.
Milligan?
Yeah, I think it's that one, and it goes over that. We were sitting up on that, and I shot this with like a 600 millimeter lens. it's just a different perspective, you know, it's a different, the light was cool, and you can see the river down at the bottom there. There's more, really, I mean, it's the art that I think does it. This, I got on this trip about like how most people see Montana, you know, in the summertime when people visit and stuff, is this, like, I was trying to figure out, how do I tell that story? How do I photograph what it's like to see Montana when we all have been there, we've all thought about it, and we're driving down the road, anywhere you go, and you're just looking at it, you're like, I'm in Montana, and you're all excited, you know, and people come and that changes their life. They're little kids, you know, they can remember that when they're like 9 and they're looking out the window going to Yellowstone, or, you know. But that's what this came from, and I just have loved it. Ever since I took that, I thought, man, that's really what it looks like to a lot of people. They just look out the window and they go, and they never forget that. You know, even when you're 10, you think of that, man, remember that thing we saw at that time? And they come back, and you know, it's really important. Crown Butte, kind of quasi-public in a way. I mean, you can hike up to it. I think it's nature conservancy country, but if you haven't been up there, it's worth doing. It's a great hike, beautiful. And Crown Butte's included in this. I just really was focusing on Square Butte, but that whole area is kind of included. This is the end of Cascade Butte, and then looking into the Adels. This was from just a couple nights ago. Actually, I shot this from our porch, which is just by home. More just, you know, these things, I like to shoot this stuff when I see it, so I put these photos in here. Another, you know, this is right by past Cascade, and there's a little boat there. These guys are fishing. So, I mean, this to me, I think for me, this is one of my, this is what I try to make if I can, is just use whatever there is there, and somebody doing something, and, you know, a sky like this, and, you know, kind of what I live for. And this, yeah, I just feel like this kind of tells a story as well. I like it. There's a little water. This was several years ago when there was some water. And take a look at this. Now, can anybody recognize this location? This is a location I've shown you many times in this slideshow, but I haven't shown you since there's houses built in it. And if we go to the next slide, and this is the development. This, on the other side of that fence, is this subdivision, and people are, I suppose, still buying property there. I don't know what really is happening, but I think that's about it. I just wanted to, like, let's go back and look at that. See you can see the little S curve here. That was ice in that photo, of the other photo. It was iced over. And so it's dry now here in this photo, and I took this just about 2 weeks ago, maybe. Obviously the light's not very good, but I needed it for a reference. Anytime you want to ask questions, you can email me. I'm on Instagram at Hunt Photos and these other places. Hope nobody, I don't want anybody to get offended, you know, by pointing these things out. It's not the purpose of this. It's not to pick on somebody and say you've done something wrong or you shouldn't do that necessarily. But I mean, from a purely a historical sort of documentary standpoint, I just think it's important when we're standing here today discussing these things and we hear about them, and like to have a story of it put together so someone can have it. And maybe no one will look at it, but maybe they will. And if they go through the trouble that I've had to go through to look at the history and go like, there's nothing really holding it together, it's just a bunch of stuff, then it makes it really hard to tell a story unless somebody's, you know, and I'm a visual person, so my story is going to be visual mostly with some people intermixed with a few words, but I'm not going to go heavy into like, you know, if you want to know the geology, you can figure that out. That's available. So, anyway, if I have any questions, that'd be great. Otherwise, you can reach me at any one of these addresses. So thank you.
Does anybody have questions?
Did you say how you ended up in Great Falls, in this area?
No.
Is there a reason for that?
I moved here from East Glacier Park, where I spent about 20 years. But I moved here to be with my wife and she has 2 daughters, I have a daughter, and we moved here. She was here, I moved down here to be with her and the kids for school, and that's what happened. That's how I got to Great Falls. Stacy's from Great Falls. I was born in Walla Walla, Washington in 1970, and have lived, not any places, but kind of moved around a little bit, but only in the West, and a stint in Washington, D.C. for a couple years. East Glacier, I still have a house there that's going to be for sale this summer if anybody wants to buy a house in East Glacier. Hi. Was there more to the question?
No, that was
Okay.
one question,
Yeah.
but I do have another one.
Go ahead.
You couldn't find any Native American history
Good question.
use of that land? I mean, the Buffalo Jump from Fishkin is near
Yeah.
there, but
So, I know the people who know the history of that landscape from the Blackfeet people that know that history. And aside from the Buffalo Jump, which I didn't want to get into because that is a separate, almost a separate thing, right? Like if you get into the Buffalo Jump, you kind of got to get into a lot of stuff. But these buttes, this is what's interesting. I've now had, sort of got into a little bit of a debate with somebody on Facebook the other day who claims to know more about those buttes than any person alive, and maybe that person's in this audience, maybe not, but apparently they live in Sun River, I think, and claimed that there was no historical use. Like the Indians didn't use it, there was no names for it, so therefore it had no significance. What I know from talking with people in Browning, the Blackfeet people who, John Murray was one of the people I spoke with, and he's their historical preservation guy. He said that he does not have direct knowledge of a name that the Blackfeet have for Square Butte. There's all kinds of evidence. There is a report, there was a survey done of Crown Butte, an archaeological survey done on Crown Butte, and there was some archaeological evidence, some stone tools, and some, I mean, pretty minimal, which that doesn't surprise me. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. But the person that did the study, and this was when the Nature Conservancy, right before they bought it, they had it surveyed by the state archaeologist. What I remember most was he wasn't that impressed with the archaeology, obviously. There wasn't a lot he found, which doesn't surprise me because he probably didn't burn the top of the place off to see what was under the grass that's 3 feet tall. But he was interested in, like, I think his last comments in that letter or something was like, he almost got killed by a rattlesnake or something. I recently read there was a guy that posted the other day that said him and his friend collected 54 rattlesnakes in 1 day or 2 days between. So John Murray mentioned that there's some connection to snakes, and this might have something to do with why it wasn't as used as much as people would think. But from my personal experience and knowing the stories about rattlesnakes and how they're used and not used in Blackfeet culture, that doesn't surprise me that there would be a reason that it wasn't used quite as much as we would think. But that doesn't tell the whole story. It was a dead end pretty much for me. After I talked to John and we're friends, and he's like, dude, I just don't have it for you, it's not there. I just quit, because if he's not going to tell me what it is, I'm not going to find it in a book and probably believe much of it. John would have been the guy to tell me this is what happened or what we know, or go look somewhere else, but he didn't do that, so it's kind of an open book in a way. It's important, but it's, I just have to, I can't do everything. It's really important to me, but like I said, when the historical preservation guy says there's not much there for him to tell me, I have to go do other things. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
Do you sell your work? It's beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, yes, I do. It's for sale. Things are for sale, but I don't have any of this work developed. I had a gallery. We had a gallery in East Glacier. It was a good, fun time, and it was a good thing. But I haven't put a lot of effort into reproducing these into art. There is on that website. If you went to my website, Tony Bynum, and you looked at this project, at the bottom is the black and white with that sort of S in the front that I have available for sale. It's, but yeah, I mean, I would turn any of these into a print if somebody wanted them. It's just not been something I put a lot of time into. I probably should do more of it, but yeah, I'm too busy trying to make more work. Broke and busy. Yeah. All right, thank you. Any other questions here? Okay. Yeah, well, reach out if anybody wants to ever chat.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your work with us
Yes.
and your excitement and passion about this project as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As always, we are stoked to have everybody here. We have lots happening here at the library. Next week is actually National Library Week, so to celebrate, we are going to be hosting the librarians here, the film, not the show, sorry. So it's a documentary that's going to be potentially activate some conversations that we can all have together. And we will have a local panel of librarians here to have conversation about that show afterwards. And then we also have Russell Rowland coming out next week to talk about his new book, Be a Man. And then at the end of the month, we have a couple of really fun things. So on Saturday, no wait, brain. Okay, fourth Saturday of the month, we do an Indigenous beading class in the small meeting room with Monica Brown. And then on the 28th of this month, we have Mariah Gladstone coming down to do, she is the leader of Indigent Kitchen. She is going to be doing Indigenous foods and tastings on the Charlie cart that we have. And she was just featured on Chopped, so that's cool that we got her down here. But we have lots going on at the library. Sun River Watershed has a lot happening as well, including the rain barrel workshop. They also have weed polls. So Tony, you brought up weeds and invasive species earlier. If you want to be a part of the action, join us at one of the weed polls. I say us because I will be there as well. But it's a lot of fun, and you do feel a lot of rewarding work at the end of it. There are some surveys on your chairs. If you guys wouldn't mind filling out a survey for us, that would be amazing. Completed surveys can go on the back library table. Thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you next time.